Daniel, can you call the roll, please?
Chair Drews,
Here.
Vice Chair Schmitter,
Present.
Commissioner Block,
Here.
Commissioner Darney, Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Spulda, Commissioner Wright. A quorum is present.
Thank you. Next item of business is public comment. Any members of the public who wish to comment on Historic Resource Commission matters? Danny?
Denny French, thank you very much, Chair. My comment is Happy New Year, and well, you have quite an agenda in front of you, and I'm glad you're not just going to consideration and just saying okay to all of them. You've all taken a look at all of it. 500 and something pages, is it? Anyhow, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Danny. Any other public comment? Next item is possible action, approval of minutes from the November 6, 2024 meeting. Everyone had a chance to review those? Any questions or comments?
I move we approve the minutes from the November 6th meeting.
Motion, do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Motion and second, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved unanimously. Next item is number 5. 5A, HRC 2024-0464 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding an architectural inventory for the West Carson Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project. Heather.
Thank you, Heather Ferris, for the record. The project proposes to implement the West Carson Vulnerable User Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project, which focuses on encouraging walking and biking to school and improving student safety within a 1-mile radius of the elementary and middle schools in Carson City. This project really focuses on the west side of Carson City in areas of the Carson Middle School and the Borderick Bray Elementary School. The project involves federal funding, and therefore a Section 106 review is required in order to evaluate the proposed project's potential impacts on cultural resources. The report, which is included in your packet, concludes that historic properties will not be impacted by the project. This item is before the HRC as a consulting agency. Jeremy Hall with NCE, the firm that prepared the report, is here and available for questions.
Thank you, Heather. Any commission member questions or comments?
I do have a comment. I don't know if Jeremy wants to come up.
Jeremy Hall, NCE, for the record.
Stuart Rathbone from NCE.
Hi, Stuart.
Hi.
I kept seeing this term ranch-style bungalow come up, and it's not a term that I've ever used recording buildings. I understand what you mean by it, but I think there's other ways that we can describe the ranches that we're seeing. But that's just me, and so I defer to my other colleagues on the board here. think my concern was well, this report, of course, is not going out to the public. However, how do we describe it in the historic district? We don't use this term, correct?
We haven't, and when Dan Pizzoni did the initial inventory of Meadowland Manor, he didn't use it. So, I mean, it's just an inconsistency. And I mean, the way I see it, the problem we have is we have records that are going to SHPO and different terminology and different records, and just an issue that way. Luann?
I think probably the bigger issue is how we define ranch styles, since they have such a wide variety of elements. And so maybe it's better to call the ranch style, but then identify which influence or elements from the different styles that are incorporated into craftsman. I've seen craftsman, rustic, those kinds of flavors of the ranch style, which is the basic, like, as you say, side gable, different pitched roofs, and different elements that are attached to them. So it's something that's, I think we're at the forefront of it. We need to dive into it more and work on it, not probably in this report, obviously, but I think it brings up that question of how do we define this type of architecture that's becoming more prevalent. I mean, we're having to evaluate it more now that it's reaching of age. And then into the 60s and 70s, it changes, evolves. So maybe that's something, topic we could bring up with SHPO to see if we could come up with a context for 1950s to 1970s architecture to help define what those terms are and which ones are the styles that need to be evaluated as eligible and those that aren't, and what the character-defining features of them are.
I think there's 2 points there. The archetypal real ranch building isn't present in this area. They're all slightly earlier than that. So when you look at that California style ranch that wasn't really developed in California, that's not quite true. All these buildings in Carson, and the same applies in Reno, are earlier than that. So we've got this defined form, and we're 10 years earlier than it. That's a bigger problem.
Yeah,
I think also that I went back to the McAllister book to see if I could see it at all, and no, I mean I didn't see ranch style bungalow listed.
It is in certainly the 3rd edition.
Okay, I guess I have the one she signed, so I don't think it's the 3rd edition. But, and bungalow means something specific in terms of style. I know bungalow in a form, true form, means something specific, but the way that we use it and understand it, a lot of times we don't say craftsman, we say bungalow. We don't in our reports because we would get in trouble for that, but I don't know. I just think it's something, I love the context idea.
I think a better place to address it would probably be in a National Register nomination. If we ever go that way for the districts that were outlined in this. So I think in terms of this report, it's a little more peripheral. Any other comments?
I'm reading through this stuff, but thanks for making me go back and look at the old Sanborn maps, because I never realized that at the west side of Proctor and Division Street, the Methodist Church isn't in there, the Brewery Art Center isn't in there, there's the church isn't in there. You know how all that stuff. I guess the insurance is more for residential, I'm guessing, but that was really interesting to me.
Yeah. the I would suggest that the boundary of the West Side Historic District as it is could do with being re-examined. I'm not sure that the rules that were established for it were entirely followed through, which is why we've had to put some additions or suggest some buildings that are outside of it. And of course, we've only looked at the stretch that interacted with our project area. So that's something. And I'm not sure, but the Carson City has their own boundary for the historic district, which is more rational because it follows the blocks, and maybe that was part of the reason that boundary is
That
different.
was the reason. The Carson City District there goes on the back property line of Mountain Street. So those properties on Musser weren't part of that. And then when we did the West Side District, we worked within the Carson City Historic District to define that boundary. So it was again left out. I think if we had to do it over again, we might want to expand it. And then it's a question of, is it, there's what, 2 buildings or 3 buildings there to amend the nomination is
Yeah.
a lot more work than 3 buildings deserves. Glenn?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I enjoyed reading about the different districts or the different developments that happened, the different building unit developments. I didn't realize there were that many and that they could be defined that way. And so that was interesting. And then the other thing I was thinking about, you say how one of the defining traits of some of these districts is that they didn't have sidewalks, and they had the big lawns down to the curb. And then walking through the neighborhood, because I live in the neighborhood and walk it quite often, it's such a hodgepodge of street, like Mountain Street has the boulevard type with the big wide green strip between the street and the sidewalk with trees, mature trees. The side streets have narrower green strips sometimes, and then sometimes the sidewalks up against the curb. And then there's no sidewalk, which is why we're doing this project. Did you find any information or discussion when they were defining the development units? Like, did they want to have sidewalks? Did they not want to have sidewalks? Was that anything that was a feature of those?
We never tracked down any information in historical sources. Talking to some of the property owners, that's what we were told, that it was an individual choice when they were developing the parcels as to, and it makes sense as to what's there. It's a very odd thing, and it is kind of a characteristic. I didn't want to draw that out and place too much importance on it because this project is going to change that, and it didn't seem like something that was vital, and if we'd have drawn attention to it, it could have caused issues. You say, oh, because really it's the buildings and the landscaping that are defining the characteristics. So it's an oddity. I know walking along, sometimes you follow a bit of pavement and end up in someone's front yard, and you're sort of, oh, hang on. There's a couple that are really odd like that.
Were there any recommendations to that end about the sidewalk? I was all stuck in our forms. I didn't get very far.
No, I don't think there's anything relating to sidewalk configurations. And really, it's probably an artifact of the last 15 years more than the original development, because I think as different people bought houses, different things happen there. It's interesting that Iris and Winters have no sidewalks at all, but Musser and Telegraph have various forms. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I actually have the Meadowland Manor plat, and it shows no sidewalks with the property going right to the edge of the property line and then street, so.
In which case that makes them garden features, technically.
Any other questions or comments? I reviewed this previously before Jeremy submitted it to community development. I sent some comments regarding the R forms and just inaccuracies in there about citing and ownership and things. And I'm assuming you'll take care of those in the SHPO submittal.
Yeah, appreciate you putting the time into that, Mike.
Any other commission member questions or comments? Is there any public comment?
Monumental effort.
Denny?
Yes.
Yeah, what's the cost per page on this, Jeremy? Or per pound?
Value added.
Denny French, thank you. On page 184, there is a descripted house, and it went with the same consideration Ms. Shipman, oh shoot, Michelle had brought up with, sorry, Vice, as far as the ranch and bungalow combo. And I was tickled with that one, so I printed it up because that to me is not ranch and it's not a bungalow. So I thought that was an interesting deal. But on page 68, sightings and the physical environment, when you're talking about sidewalks having been preferred by the original creators of that property's development, whether they put a walkway around their place or not wasn't mandated. And so as we're progressing into the more modern considerations now, or what they consider modern or more relevant to the now developments, can it be defined, is that defined originally as some style and then something that you would be able to put in a category? Because some of this stuff is so unusual. I don't know, modern, or is it an early, I can't think of the artist, but he was painting as an adult, and as he got older, which artist is that? He started to paint as a child, more the feelings, the emotionals of it. So style changes, and some of this is just not, I can't tag it as a style. So are we asking people that are developing to please give us what the style is so that in our books 50 years from now we can relate to specific? So if there's a bungalow, it's a bungalow, or if it's a ranch, it's a ranch. But what is that they're coming up with now, I'm not so sure. And so that's a question. But I was tickled by 184 and then also by page 68 on the physical of the sidewalks or not sidewalks or such. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So is action regarding this HRC-2024-0464 that the Commission agrees with the staff report in summary, that the project involves the construction of existing roadways, sidewalks along fully developed residential corridors, and the limits of the project will be contained within the current areas of disturbance. New visual elements that will be introduced into the existing streetscape will include replacement or modifications of existing elements that are similar in scale and general location. The report concludes that the project will have no effect on architectural resources designated as historic properties and meets the definition of no historic properties affected as defined in 36 CFR Part 800. I
think that's good.
Is that fine?
Motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you guys very much for the work you did on this. It's we've got other districts to consider in the future, so this is a good foundation to start thinking about stuff like that. So, thank you, guys.
Thank you all for your time reviewing it. Yep. We've got a good one with Stuart.
Yep. Next item is 5B, HRC 2024-056 for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding the Historic Resources Commission Annual Report for 2024. Heather.
Heather Ferris again. The HRC bylaws require the HRC to submit an annual report to the Board of Supervisors, including information about cases reviewed by the HRC, administrative reviews, and information regarding other historic preservation activities. I've provided you with a draft report for your consideration. It encompasses all of the applications that were reviewed last year and any other activities.
Thank you, Heather. Are there any questions or comments regarding the annual report? Is there any public comment regarding the annual report?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Don.
I move to approve the 2024 Historic Resources Commission Annual Report to the Board of Supervisors as presented by staff.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next item is 5C, HRC 2024-0458 for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding nominations for the 2025 Carson City Historic Preservation Awards for outstanding achievements in historic preservation. Heather, do you want?
Yeah, I'll just briefly say that this is really just to get you guys started thinking about who you might want to nominate. I'll bring it back in March for an official nomination, but just, start considering who you might want to nominate.
Does anybody want to throw out any, Jed?
There's a new owner over at, what is it, the Smale House on Robinson and Curry Street, and they repainted it. They bought it away from, I guess, Scott Coletti had it, and they repainted it back to the yellow that they thought was original, and that might have been part of the Habs report in the 70s with that cover, but they redid a bunch of landscaping, fixed fences, and freshened it up. That might be one.
Went from white to yellow.
So
Do we have a list from last year? That, I think there are a few items from last year that we chose from. We
The
can put
folks
those
that were nominated. So
That
we really didn't have a list last
were
year.
discussed.
What we ended up with, I'll have to look at my report. You ended up nominating Sarah Martin for the Wrinkle Mansion and Stan Jones. So we really didn't develop a list last year. The only other thing was RCI's rebuild. And I've kind of been following that with the building department to see how quickly it might get done because it has to be completed before it can be nominated. So I don't know that it'll be completed by May. They're doing a lot of the interior stuff right now, so.
And I talked to Bruce Scott Saturday. We were
Okay.
talking about this stuff, and it's taking a lot longer. They were hoping to
Yeah.
be in November.
Yeah.
And he said they're doing they still got the pillars on the outside to do and landscaping, but the inside, now they're working on the architectural details and rebuilding that stuff and doing a lot of paint. And then back to Joan's comment, Bobby Benson did paint the house 2 different colors. And going back through trying to find the historic markers that the Carson City Historic Commission did in 72, that's when, was it Jan Benson, Bobby's husband, pulled off the aluminum siding and redid the original siding back onto the house.
Wow.
So, I mean, I don't know if they were, I don't think they were giving an award like that back, well, they were back in 72, but it wasn't of that house. But that might be one of consideration because she's been there for 50 plus years, and they've really kept that place up, and it looks really nice now.
Like,
Okay. Why don't we just
402
think
South
about it in the
Division.
next, before the next meeting, and
Okay.
we can come up with,
It sounds like Bruce would be done by May with RCI.
I can reach out to him.
Okay, yeah, it sounds it's possible.
I was wondering if we could give an award to him just for having the courage to do that and start that project.
Well, and maybe giving an award to RCI because it's not just Bruce. I mean, obviously he's spearheading it, but Joe and everything else, they're putting a lot of their own money into it. And they didn't get to do any of the engineering work on there. That's why there was more LVLs than you've ever seen in your life on there. But Bruce was telling me they're going to keep 3 of the water heaters. One's going to be over a vent cover, and he's going to have one in his office powder coated. And somebody else wanted them, but they found somebody to repurpose those actually, so it didn't all go into the landfill. And the other thing he told me, the building behind it was the old Fourth Ward School that was moved over from Roop Street, but it was only the building portion that is closest to the sidewalk that was moved. They added the other portion on in the 70s. And it had been a rental apartment building, and he said that somebody got a little carried away and rolled a tire from the stairs right out through the front door, taking the door with it. But, I mean, Bruce has been, I mean, what they've done in that building as well. So maybe RCI as a whole, or giving Bruce an individual award after everything is completely 100% done.
yeah, that might be a good option rather than recognizing the building, recognizing the efforts that RCI has put in. So we'll put that on our list to discuss it in March. Any public comment? There's one more.
The house on the corner of Caroline and Spear Street that Jeff and Michelle just purchased away from the wonderful neighbor over there, but they repainted the whole thing. It's white with black trim. He redid a lot of the trim. They fixed the roof. They've redone the electrical and the plumbing, and they cut down 23 weed trees, if you will, unearthed 2 giant sequoias that you could never see, and some sidewalk in the front of the house. But they put a lot of work into it when they got it, and they just wanted to downsize, and they knew they overpaid for it, but they really wanted it, and they're living there. So that's kind of exciting that they did all that.
Okay, I think it's actually nice to recognize people as we look at these awards too, so I think it's good to bring that up. Any public comment on this item? Hearing none, we'll move to 5D for possible action, discussion and possible action to elect a Historic Resources Commission Chairman and Vice Chairman for a 1-year term ending in January 2026. One question about that is there's 2 members that terms expire in February. Can we put those up for nomination?
Mike, what was the question again?
There's
we woke
2 or
him
3 members whose terms expire this February. I know Michelle and I are. So I'm just wondering if we can nominate.
Well, my question is, are those 2 people coming back? Do they want to come?
I think they've both sent in their applications, but.
Yes.
Todd, is there,
I think it's okay, you can. And then if something happens and the individuals don't come back, then you'd have to elect a new chair or a new vice chair.
all right,
Can I make a couple comments? You know, we go through this every year, and this is the one meeting I'm glad that this year that my colleague next door is here, because you don't want to miss this meeting or you end up on a board. So when I kind of look at this and I look at somebody like myself, I like serving on this board, but I think the people that we want to see, especially when we look at administrative review and approval, things like that, that we're looking for consistency, clarity, knowledge about historic buildings. And I mean this in a very honest way, an unbiased review of some of those in the way that Mike approaches this. And not to take from anybody else on this board, but I've known Mike a long time, and he really does possess every one of those qualities that I look at is for somebody that leads a group. I get around so many of these boards and we kind of revolve it. Oh, it's their turn, it's their turn. But we really do have an incredibly qualified person to chair this board, and he's demonstrated that with his leadership for this is how we get out of ever getting. So I would like to nominate Mike for another term.
Thank you, Don. With that, I'll open nominations. And are there any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Michelle as vice chair.
I was going to get to that.
Let me close chair first. Any other nominations for chair? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Man,
I guess there's no,
Now, if I could just have one more minute.
I guess there's no one opposed. So
Since I gave that little introduction of Mike, we're very fortunate to have somebody, in second place that possesses all of those same qualities. And the only thing that I fear is, she did have to run one meeting for us last year, and you were great. You were great. So I would like to nominate Michelle for another term too.
are there any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, I'll
You win.
call for a vote on Michelle for vice chair.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're under leadership again. Next item is item number 6, staff reports. Heather.
So your next meeting will be March 5th, 4 PM. And at that meeting, we'll be looking for scavenger hunt ideas if you choose to continue with that, as well as volunteers. And then, again, the historic preservation nominee.
Any commission member reports or comments?
I wondered what happened. The Ferris Mansion got red tagged and then they stopped and then it looks like they finished some things. What have they haven't come to us for anything.
We're still working through the code enforcement process. They did appeal one of the notices, and the hearings officer gave them until, I believe it was February 5th. So we're still waiting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't noticed they've done much except complete the pavers and then, Somebody's in it now.
Neatened up.
yeah.
That's all I can
they
say.
covered in the skid steer in the sand and the papers were all done.
Yeah, but and the windows are fixed. There's not cardboard in the windows anymore.
Right.
So I think there's someone living in it now.
That's what we've assumed as well.
Okay.
I
One
have
of
a
the things
question.
that's, go ahead, Don.
Sorry. What do you think? You're the chairman? Heather, I hate to ask this. It seems like I get to do this a couple times a year. Anything on the church?
So I thought I reported out at the last meeting that they found the original louvers, reinstalled them. They've painted the steeple, and they are supposed to be coming to you probably in March with a request to remove the cross. So,
So
Did hear you say that, but I didn't see it.
Okay.
I don't visually see the
No, the-
louvers.
the louvers are inside. I have the pictures that Bill Miles sent me. So the louvers are still there. They haven't been restored. They
they
will be.
haven't been.
But they put plywood over the corner moldings with ringlet nails. And so Bill's got a way to cut them off without using a grinder, and he's just been delayed. He was going to start on that before Christmas. But the louvers never got removed.
Yeah, they
And
never
the
went
chicken
anywhere.
wires behind there and everything as well. So it is on, Bill is going to do that, but Bill, when I ran into him when at Levitt Amp, he said, oh, hell, I'll paint the steeple for free. And so he got up there with his crew, and they painted the steeple. But now they're just waiting for, I don't know if it's the weather or what Bill's going on. He's been doing a lot of work out at Sutro, but they're going to pull the plywood off the outside that was just put over all the moldings and then redo the louvers. I think Scotty's overjoyed in his shop that he'll be working on that, so.
Okay, good.
And I mean,
Thank you.
Scotty, that's sarcastic. Happy.
Okay, Don?
Yeah.
You good?
Heather, at our next meeting, can we have an item that kind of looks at projects that the commission might want to start looking at and taking on? There's been some comments about, I'm trying to remember the address. I think it's it's the twin to the Crowell, or the
To the Kroll office? Oh,
Emperor
yes, the-
Crowell House.
Yeah.
603 West Robinson.
Yeah. It'd sure be nice if we had some vehicle to help fund maintenance and things like that within the district. And it might be a nice thing to talk about in March and try to figure out where we want to go. The supervisors always ask that question, what projects are you working on?
That's
Where do you?
400 block, is it?
where-
Yeah, it's not 600. The
commission
lady
go.
that owns it's a realtor down in Southern California. And I have her number if any of you want to call her. But she says, I've got plans, I just don't know when I'm going to do anything. And I don't know if it was her father that lived in the house or anything, but when the stained glass got blown out of that thing, I think Shelley Aldine called her. I talked to Heather. I called her. I just Googled her and called her. And so she did find someone to at least put some piece of plexiglass in there.
Yeah, Shelley was talking to me about it too, and it's just, we had that, we had the Ferris Mansion, there's just, be nice if we had some way that people could,
And I have
we could
to,
help people take care of their properties other than the tax.
I don't know what happened to Phil Hersey, but he's cleaned up his yard. I mean, it looks better than it has for a while. When I see him, I try to compliment him, so hopefully he'll keep on with the track.
So just for clarification, you're looking kind of to discuss maybe funding mechanisms. Or do
Just
you have
future-
specific
Future
properties?
projects and things that the commission should consider.
Okay. An open-ended item?
Yeah.
Okay.
No action.
Anything else, commission members? Is there any other public comment? Denny, we're just gonna put you on the agenda.
Denny French, thank you. Thank you, Chair. And thank you all. I would want to ditto everything that Mr. Danny, see, I have trouble getting everybody's last names. I'm just getting the first names. Robert had mentioned and suggested, and compliment you all on your teamwork and the fact that your knowledge of the historical stuff. So I just go on and it's ditto, ditto, ditto on all of that. But I do have a request. When you talk about a church, you're going to have to tell me which one. I did get into it as soon as I knew the Louvers and that. I knew which church you were talking about. And based on that, thought about the church. But before I go anywhere else in my rambling, Picasso is the artist. He started very fine, is it a Kodak or is it a painting, to a childlike, the face, nose is here and the ears are there. But the thing is for me is that with this upcoming development that we're having, some people are trying to sort of mimic certain styles, and that's going to make it even harder for those that are actually having to say, well, how do I define this? So good luck. And the next thing is, as far as the church, I call it the Brewery Art Church. And I had a question about the cross, and I hope before I leave, somebody will be able to ask that. Was it defined as a historical point and replaced? Because I haven't been down there to see. And as far as the louvers, I would like to see it like that, because that's how I originally got to see it. Thank you.
Perhaps we can agree on calling it the Performance Hall.
Yeah.
It's not a church, it's a performance hall.
So originally, Denny, I think the Brewery Arts Center came and wanted to take the cross off and do some modifications. And the commission talked about it, and all the churches in Carson City were located within those 3 blocks. And at that time, we kind of felt that, no, the cross, these were churches. It's part of the theme in that neighborhood. Let's leave the cross on. The Brewery Arts Center agreed and left it on. So that's kind of the history of the cross and why it's still there.
Mike, we also looked at defining elements of a structure. It's not about religion. We were talking about defining elements of that structure. And we can rename it. We can call it something else, but it's of historical significance to us because it was a church, not a performance hall, but it was a church, and that's the character of that building. It'll be for a great discussion.
And just Mike, just for clarification, there were 5 churches because the Baptist church was over where Alice McKenzie's office is, and they didn't even, I talked to the pastor up there and he didn't even know that. So I'm trying to find a picture. But if you want to see the original cross on what was originally the Catholic Church, now the Performance Hall, on the Western Nevada Historic Photo Collection, it's really detailed. It was really kind of a cool thing. And the other thing I want to keep in mind, the reason that the mural wasn't painted all the way up to the cross is because, well, nobody at the Brewery Arts Center wanted to pay for a 120-foot man lift. So.
Next item is motion for adjournment. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second? Second. Motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor?
I
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Heather.